This election day, certain wards in the city will vote on whether they think Chicago should drop its mayor-appointed school board. A ward-by-ward referendum on the elected representative school board, or ESRB, will show up on ballots in 38 wards. Wendy Katten is on the board of directors at Raise Your Hand, a grassroots public education advocacy group. Raise Your Hand has been fighting for the ESRB this election season, and she's here to tell us about it. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, what would you say, what would a elected school board actually do? How would it really be different than the current appointed school board?
Well, one of the main differences that would be critical is it would allow us to have a system of checks and balances. Right now, we have one person with sort of absolute rule making decisions who appoints a board of people who he knows will approve of his policies. So we've really, I don't think in the history of mayoral control have had a policy that's been rejected. So what an elected board would do would be allow us to elect people who might not agree with this sort of unilateral rule that we have right now. So it would allow us to have various stakeholders in there who could debate, discuss in open fashion, not behind closed doors, to the public and be sort of accountable to the public in terms of why they're doing what they're doing.
So I want to get to the implications of elected versus appointed, but
Yeah.
what is the core thing you think would happen once there's an elected school board? How would things change? I mean, I have a son that's in public school.
Right.
What would I expect to be different from my son's school experience?
Well, right now, at the local school level, we have LSCs. And so you have parents who can have a say in what happens at the local school level. But there's no say, there's no voice that's representative beyond the mayor or his friends in terms of what happens in terms of policies and how the budget is voted on at the district level. So, say you are at a neighborhood school, maybe you won't have budget cuts occur. Right. So does that make sense? So right now there's no way to impact policy at the larger level.
So some policies are, for instance, the way that budgeting is managed
Yeah.
in each of the schools. The schools are given a lump sum number, and it's really done by formula for the different schools. You expect that might change the way the structure of the magnet schools or the number of charter schools that are available.
Any kind of systemic issue like that, the way funds have been shifted from neighborhood schools to charter schools over the last 3 years. I mean, there's all kinds of ways money is being spent that regular people have no say in at the local school level. Do we want to have a class size policy for CPS like many districts around the country have? And it could be any policy. Right now, there's no way to get to changing those policies to more evidence-based, education reforms because we would have to change the structure in order to change the policies. Right now, when I go to a school board meeting, which I do pretty much every month, and I go up there and I read my research, and I know that I'm not having a real conversation. The people are there and they're there to sign off on what they've been told to sign off on. They're not really there to engage with the public and debate what's best for children in Chicago.
But Chicago has some very serious structural issues, which are there's not enough money. There's been some problems with maybe having enough trained teachers or enough teachers in order to do what it is that we want to be able to do for educating children.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we have some issues with testing, or whether or not the testing is right or the testing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that an elected school board is going to make a serious change in that versus what an appointed school board does?
It's not that we think an elected school board would be a panacea that would solve everything immediately, because you have to elect members who, are doing research and homework. But right now, when I go to a school board meeting and a school board member asks a question such as, is the promotion policy in CPS tied to test scores, which a school board member asked last month, and I know the answer because parents have been talking about that policy for 3 years to this person, and they're still asking that. Do you know what I mean? Right now, we have a lot of people who aren't, I would say, invested. And so it's not that it's a panacea, but it would allow us to have more people with different points of view who care about these issues. Right now, you can't get at those policies with a unilateral point of view that's just appointing people to sign off.
So one of the big complaints about Chicago public schools is that it's a monolithic, difficult place to get through and talk to. I know as a reporter, I'd had a lot of problems just getting information out of Chicago public schools.
Right.
For instance, one of the local school council elections, I couldn't even get a list of candidates from them. There continues to be problems with being able to get information out of
Right.
Chicago public schools so that we feel like we have some sort of interaction with it. But is that really necessarily an elected versus appointed problem, or is that there's just bad management?
Well, I think that, again, I don't think that anyone's saying an elected board would solve every problem. We don't know what would happen in that particular case. But again, it would allow us to work towards electing people who are invested and have, perhaps a better understanding of policies around education. We don't have that right now. So, you know, there are a whole host of issues, but there are also priorities that the school board chooses, where they choose to spend money. Maybe an elected school board would have taken the $20 million that went on a no bid contract to a bad principal training group when we were broke and put it towards reducing class size for a low income community, or, having reading interventionists, or, having librarians again after 200 were cut. So we can't even get to that stuff without having a group of people. Right now, there's a sort of ideological viewpoint. We got to have a system with a higher number of privately run charter and contract schools. That's just the viewpoint. But who decided that? Where was that debated? Did anyone have a say in it? You can't really have a better system, I don't think, without democracy, without a system of checks and balances. We don't have that.
So what about the concept of a partial appointed school board versus full appointed? There's been some discussion of, well, maybe it should be mixed, some part appointed by the mayor or some by the governor or whoever.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be a step in the right direction, but I'm for an elected representative school board where people are voted in by region and we have some representation of the communities in which these schools are. Right now, we have a bunch of people up there not really in touch with at the school level. So I guess it would be a step, but I'm for a full elected school board, as
Sure.
94% of school boards in the country are elected. So somehow they're all the world didn't fall apart. In fact, if you look at our school system, it is the place where we're trying to make sure our democracy, continues, where we're raising engaged citizens who, promote our democracy, but yet we have a system that really stifles that doesn't allow for it. And I think there's this fear of, what if we let people have a voice? Well, what we can't have politics in education. But right now, it's pure politics, and it's just the politics of one person, and that's a problem.
So right now in the Chicago area, we have another elected board that serves one particular purpose, which is the Metropolitan Reclamation District, our sewers. So the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District is actually, in many ways, a model organization. They win all kinds of awards for how great they are. They built the deep tunnel. They reversed the direction of the river. An amazing organization. They win all kinds of engineering awards.
Yeah.
That's great. It has an elected board, but almost nobody really knows who those board members are.
Yeah.
There's a few of them that stick out.
Yeah.
And the board members, the electoral process for the board members is widely recognized to be one that is basically funded by contractors and people who have a direct interest in the sewers.
Right.
And the majority of Chicagoans, even though we all use the sewers every day, don't really have a stake or an understanding of the issues that are before the Water Reclamation Board. Is that a prelude to what we would expect for an elected school board?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, what do parents care about more than their child's public education? I mean, I don't think the interest in sewers is really at the same level as the interest in our children's public schools. And so, you know, I get the argument that the what if money comes into it and all that, but nobody ever says that about, having a state legislature. So, there's money in politics. Maybe we should get rid of the legislature and just have the governor, or, let's get rid of the city council because of the money. No one ever says that. And so I do think there would be way more.
Well, a lot of people think the city council is crooked too.
I know that, but I'm saying is that no one's ever saying we just want one branch government with no checks and balances. Even though there are a lot of problems with our government, I don't hear that as a recommendation. Let's get rid of the other branches of government. I don't know. Right now, there's no, our school board can levy taxes. There's now nobody there. I don't think there's any other system that can do that without a system of checks and balances. The school board can raise taxes, and they're not elected. There's no accountability there. No one they can has a voice in that. And so I think there's more interest. If you open the newspaper, how many stories do you see on public education versus the sewer system? I mean, there's just more awareness and interest in public discourse. And if it was done in a geographic representative way in regions of the city, there would be people who live in, certain districts that are more known to their neighborhood and their neighbors. And so, I think there would be more interest, and I think it would bring in. I mean, I think parents are disenfranchised because they don't have a voice, and they know when they go to the school board meeting, no one's listening. The 20,000 people or whatever that went to those hearings on school closings knew that no one was listening to them, and so it continues to disenfranchise, I think, parents and voters because they know that their voice doesn't matter, and that this is what's going to happen. It's absolute rule, and no one's got to say. And so we're not saying it wouldn't be a little bit messy, and that it wouldn't be, but democracy can be that way, and it's better than sort of what we have right now, I think.
Okay, well, we'll find out maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me, Wendy.
Thank you.
You can learn more about the elected representative school board and 184 campaigns for aldermen in Chicago by subscribing to aldertrek.com, our email newsletter, or by listening to this series on Rivet Radio, or by listening to this series on YouTube. Thank you very much.